Welcome back, all of you. I think the speaker is always new, and of course, the chair, respected Sir Srinivas sir. But we have been doing this ever since this pandemic has struck us in a very bad way. Uh, to be precise, from the end of May, every month we have a session which is beyond academics. We started off like beyond neurology, but then the crowd is comprised of people from all walks of life. So we just changed the caption to life beyond your profession. Your profession means it could be anything, from a homemaker to a person uh, who may be an IAS officer or whatsoever. So this year we are starting with mindfulness, which we all know that uh, I think it's very difficult to explain it. I think I don't know. Sushant will be the better person to do that. But having said that, I was just reading one book by Arun Shori, like how to prepare for death. The even the caption was was very curious. And then I thought that you may be knowing Arun Shori, and his wife is ailing from a terminal Parkinsonian syndrome and is wheelchair bound, and he has only one son, and he is having a spastic cerebral palsy, and all the three, and he is aging. So three people preparing for death in a family. So that was the last book which I read. So that it is said that the one certainty in life, the one appointment with each of us is definitely going to face is what is called death. But then what is happening between life and death is what is important. And we keep on asking the same question to various religious leaders or spiritual leaders. Some people don't ask this question at all. They do enjoy their life. And actually, is there what happens after death? So many questions and questions and questions. That is what we have also put forth in the prelude. Actually, all these thoughts are crossing our mind all the time, but we don't have an answer. And but they keep on coming. And finally, one day our appointment register is full and it's cancelled. And I think it's worth reading this book. It touches upon all great spiritual leaders. Having said that, we don't want spiritual leaders to be the what you call the role model. There are people in front of us. But so with that introduction, I think we have Dr. Sushant, who is going to take us through the journey of mindfulness, and we have none other than Professor H.P. Srinivas. And I should thank Dr. Gopal for introducing this concept, because we were always inclined to academics all the time. And then a pandemic had to strike us in a bad way or a nasty way for us to think that, okay, we are facing something I mean, what do you call it, bad and dreadful, so that we have to think of death also now. So that prompted us to start the whole series, and we don't uh, think back. It has been going in a very nice way, and thanks all of you for joining us. And Gopal will be introducing the speaker as well as Sir as well. So I hand over the microphone to Gopal. Gopal, please. Yes, Gopal.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Respected teachers and friends, I welcome you all to the first session on the personal development program in 2021. And today we will be discussing about mindfulness.
We want to see you also. Video, please, Gopal.
Yeah, I think Gopal,
Sir, there is
without.
some technical problem, I think.
Oh, just now we were seeing you. Okay.
One minute, sir.
Okay. ठीक है.
Some internet bandwidth has some problem right now. Power is fluctuating.
Okay.
The video will be on as soon as some internet issue is solved, I think.
Right.
So are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Fine.
Audio is good.
So it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce Dr. H.B. Srinivas sir, who has accepted this invitation to moderate this particular session. Most of neurologists, they know Dr. H.B. Srinivas. He is one of the senior most consultant neurologist and epileptologist currently practicing in Sagar Hospital and Agadi Hospital in Bangalore. Previously, he was a faculty at the National Institute, NIMHANS, Bangalore. And Sir also has worked in the Narayana Hrudayalaya Hospital earlier as a postgraduate teacher for the DNB training program. In fact, he started the DNB program in Narayana Hrudayalaya hospitals. He has published many books and he has received many awards. And he is one of the most brilliant clinical neurologist and a brilliant human being I have ever interacted in my life. One of the most important things that I have learned from him that he believes in the clinical neurology. Now, another important thing which I have learned from him that he has worked in the social aspects of the epilepsy. So I welcome Dr. H.B. Srinivas sir to moderate this particular session, and I request him if to give some opening remark to this particular session, and subsequently I will introduce Dr. Sushant.
Okay, thank you very much, Gopal. I mean, it is very interesting to share this particular session because this is something new for me. And I must thank the COVID pandemic, which has brought the mind into the focus from the brain. All these days, we are all talking about brain. And we had some opportunity to introspect and look into the mind. We thank the Sri Chitra for having started this particular sessions. I had the opportunity to listen to Gopal also earlier and another two persons. It was very interesting because it gives us an insight into what we are doing. And all of us know that we are all running after what is called as a rat race. And the quotation is, however much you run, ultimately you are still a rat. So I think that's what is important. Let's slow down from the rat race, look into other aspects of mind, and then see that the mind, which is the boss of the body, mind is the boss. So we have to tune the mind into something which is more relaxing. And I hope I will get enough inputs from Sushant today. And I think Sushant will be introduced by Gopal. Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So you go ahead.
Thank you so much, sir. And it's a great honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Sushant to this gathering. And Dr. Sushant Panda, he passed his MD in anesthesiology from SCB Medical College, Cuttack, Orissa, one of the premier institution and one of the oldest medical college in our country. And subsequently, he continued his higher education from the Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute for Medical Sciences and Technology, Trivandrum, India. After his training, he moved to Amrita Institute in Cochin, and he worked there for a few years and subsequently relocated to Hyderabad. And currently, he is working in KIMS Hospital, Hyderabad, as a senior consultant cardiac anesthesiologist. And his main area of interest is in transplant anesthesiology. Over the last, and I'm a friend of Dr. Sushant for more than 30 years. And let me acknowledge that I became a doctor because of the inspiration from Dr. Sushant. Actually, I joined MBBS because of inspiration from him. And many things I have learned from him. All the personal development course, whatever I have done in my life, I learned from him. As a friend, actually, he has a huge impact in my personal as well as in my professional life. So it's a great honor that we will be listening to Dr. Sushant Panda, who has been working in this field of mindfulness for almost more than 1 decade. So before we begin, I just want to tell one short story. Let me tell you that a monk, once he took his boat to the middle of a lake, and subsequently he closed his eye to meditate, which is away from his monastery, and he was alone. After a few hours of undisturbed silence and meditation, suddenly a disturbed thought came to his mind, and he became angry. As he felt, subsequently started feeling that a boat bumping into him repeatedly in his thoughts. And he started vividly imagining that a boat is rapidly coming towards him. Despite great efforts, he could not control his anger. And then subsequently, he had to open his eyes. But what he saw, that it was an empty boat. Do not let empty boats bother you. In our daily life, many times, almost 1,000 times every single day, this kind of empty boats comes to our thoughts. It's only the nature of an empty boat that disturbs us. So let us bury our negative thoughts. We need to understand the art and science of cultivating the power of self-control. And with this background, I invite Dr. Sushant Panda to deliver his talk on mindfulness.
Thank you, Dr. Gopal, for such a nice introduction. Actually, I also can't imagine such a nice introduction. And thank you, Asarata ma'am, for giving me a chance. And I have passed from Chitra and I have not gone after that for last maybe 12 years. I really like that place, but it could not happen to work there again. And thank you, man. At least I can meet all of you by online now. Thank you, Srinivas sir, again to join with us, because such a great honor for all of us that you join with us. And I welcome all of you. So let's start without delay. There is something common in all of us.
Sushant, can you share your slides, please?
Yeah, I'll share. I'll share. Okay. There is something common in all of us. We are all learners. Only that's the reason we are here in a Sunday evening, 7 o'clock, to learn something new. And without wasting time, let's learn about mindfulness for next 40 minutes. Let me share with my slide. Is it visible to everyone? Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, it is visible.
A year ago, when someone say about mindfulness, actually people used to look at a strange and wonder why these people brought this mindfulness topic to the workplace or for discussion. And people used to think that mindfulness is for the people like saints or monks.
ಹೌದಾ ಹೌದಾ ಸರಿ 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 ಇಲ್ಲ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ
Can we
ಬರ್ತಾ ಇಲ್ಲ
Can I request everybody to mute themselves, please? Ravish? Ravish, please mute everybody.
Yes.
Actually, when somebody speak about mindfulness 20 years ago, people used to look him at a strange and wonder why he brought mindfulness to this place like workplace or for discussion. People used to think like that mindfulness is for persons like monk or saints, but the perspective towards mindfulness is changing. And in last 1 decade, we can see the number of publications come out in mindfulness and its effects. It has shown that mindfulness is helpful for each and every aspects of our life. Actually, after my post-graduation, when I started working in my cardiac ICU, I realized that only 20% of our knowledge, of mind knowledge, is of use, and rest 80% is how I present at the location, how I present and applying my knowledge to keep a patient alive. If you can see this ECMO ICU, you can clearly understand that if I do a single wrong move, I can put this patient in danger. So unknowingly, I started mindfulness practicing 12 years back. And in the year 2014, actually, I got a book that is written by Elaine Langer. The name of the book is Mindfulness. And after that, slowly after reading that, I started practicing it consciously. And the same thing helped me to survive in the COVID period last year. And we know that how it is important to, before touching a patient, how we have to do hand washing or after touching a patient, and how to wear proper PPE, everything. Mindfulness is so much required when you are working in a COVID ICU. So, my dear friends, I have a question for you now. Actually, 3 questions, and the answer is a single word. Single word. So, after I finish this question, please write it down in your chat box. What is the best answer for you? The first question is, why people suddenly react and later regret? Why people do binge eating and feel bad about that later? And what is the reason behind all the traffic accidents? So please share your comment in your chat box. What is the best answer for you for all this question? Come on, 30 seconds, please. Chaotic mind, yes. Lack of awareness, great. Yes. Yes. Fine. So lack of awareness is the most important thing. And what we tell in our, what I'm going to tell you is it's basically mindlessness. Mindlessness. And in his book, Ellen Langer told, mindlessness is pervasive. I believe virtually all problems, personal, interpersonal, professional, social, either directly or indirectly start from mindlessness. So, ladies and gentlemen, mindfulness is the way to success basically in 3 major categories of our life. That is the mental health, physical health, and in workplace for increasing our focus and concentration. So let's learn today about what is mindfulness, what is the 3 major benefits of it, how to practice it. That is the most challenging part nowadays, how to practice mindfulness. And finally, we have a mindful session of 8 minutes. Before understanding mindfulness, we have to understand 3 things. What are thoughts, awareness, and mind? Let's imagine you are waiting in a traffic and thousands of taxis or cabs are waiting for you. We have a destination to go, and there's a straight road, and there are a number of other roads. So knowing the roads or knowing the routes are basically the awareness. You are aware about everything what is exists, and choosing the right taxi to reach to your destination without losing time is mindfulness. Suppose you don't know about the roads, that you are not aware about something, you are lost. Or even if you are aware about something and you are not choosing all the which taxi is going to your destination mindfully, you are going to again lost. So actually, this is the thing that is happening in our life every time. 60 to 80,000 thoughts come to our mind daily. And out of that, 85% are the same thoughts which come to our mind. That will be repeated day after day after day. And all these thoughts are basically conditions. These are very much conditions. These thoughts, what we get from our parents, the thoughts we get from our teachers, maybe from our friends, or maybe our religion, and everything is conditioned. Whenever we get a stimulus, we simultaneously immediately react it without thinking. So that is the conditions. But mindfulness enter to this thoughts process and break all the conditions, and it helps in owning our thoughts and free us from these patterns or conditions. So after knowing these thoughts, let's understand our awareness. Awareness is simply being a state of being aware. That is the knowledge of understanding of that is something that is happening time to time, or that is already exists. In our previous example, we saw knowing all the routes that already exist is awareness. One thing is remember in this place is wherever our energy awareness goes, our energy flow. Let's see in this. We have all seen movie. We have all went to movie theater. what the director is doing in that movie is really interesting. First, he will introduce all the characters with a name in the casting. So we are getting aware about all the characters. Then he will move our awareness from one place of our brain to other part. So sometimes we get happy, sometimes we get angry, sometimes we are started laughing, sometimes people cry with tears in their eyes. So he moved our awareness from one place of our brain to other place of our brain, and we feel the same feelings, same emotions for some time. And at the end, we'll finish with either a happy or sad ending, and we are in that emotion, with that feeling for another 2 to 3 hours. So the science behind this is, in our brain, there are a lot of centers are there, and our awareness works like a torchlight, maybe a ball of light. And wherever our awareness go, that part of our brain lighted up, maybe stimulated, and we feel the same feelings that will be reflected in our emotions, that will be projected to our behavior. And if we are in that part of the brain for a longer time, we are becoming the same person. Suppose somebody goes to our emotional center, that's the amygdala, we can see here. That's the limbic system of our brain. Neurologists are there, they can tell better than me. And somebody is staying in their amygdala, maybe in the part of the feeling of emotion or anxiety or depression for a longer time, will start feeling the same emotions for a longer time, and he will start behaving like that, and it will become his habit. And it's a vicious cycle from the thoughts, feeling, behavior, actions, and habits. It will be repeated time and time to time, and people love to stay there. They don't want to come out from their state of emotion of anxiety and depression. And even after 10 years of this, something goes wrong, they are in that state of emotion. But ladies and gentlemen, we have that power to bring our awareness from one part of our brain to the other part at our will. That is the power of our mind, power of our brain. We all have realized at one place, at one point of our time, that suppose we are working in a deep or full concentration, in deep work state, and after finishing 2 to 3 hour period deep work, you suddenly realize, oh, I am feeling so much of hungry, or I am feeling thirsty, and suddenly we go to eat something. What is happening? Why you are not getting aware of your hunger or thirst for last 2 to 3 hours? You are in this part of the brain, that the concentration, planning, and problem solving part. And at that time, you are totally forgot about your body awareness. This is the part of our other part of the brain, where we are not able to feel that we have hunger or thirst. But as soon as you finish your deep work, you have come out from that focused part of your brain to a diffuse part, and suddenly you will realize, I am feeling hunger. So friends, this happened to us unknowingly, but we have that power to harness. We can harness that power to move our awareness from one part of our brain and to the other part, and we can feel the same emotion, same behavior, same action we can take, and that can change our life. So after understanding these two parts, these three things, thoughts, awareness, and mind, let's come to mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of being aware of body, mind, and feelings. That is the internal environment, and also the surrounding environments, what is happening outside us. It also involves the acceptance, meaning that we pay attention to our thought and feelings without judging them. That is the non-judgmental practice. And what kind of attention we need to pay? It is a kind attention. It should be loving, it should be gentle. Our awareness move from one place to the other all the time, but we have to lovingly, kindly, gently bring back our attention from other place to the point for where we want. So friends, we are human beings, and we don't do anything, we don't practice anything without any reward or any benefit from that. So let's see what are the benefits from this mindfulness we can get. Sorry. Mindfulness is the way to success in three parts, three aspects of our life, what we discussed earlier. And the first and most important thing is the mental health. And mindfulness has proven to decrease our stress level. There are a lot of research that came out which has studied the effect of mindfulness on the anxiety and depression level. But the most important and most significant one is the researcher Gala Despoder. What she did is she did fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging of patients before mindfulness and 8 weeks after mindfulness. And you can see the activation of amygdala. Activation of amygdala. This is the part of our emotion center before mindfulness and 8 weeks after mindfulness. And you can see definitely there is a decrease in the activation of amygdala after 8 weeks of mindfulness practice. So it proves that mindfulness helps us to decrease our anxiety and depression, and we can live a happy and joyous life. Mindfulness also helps us to keep us healthy. Another two researchers, Simpson and Maple, from the University of these are from New Zealand, University of Technology something from New Zealand. What they did is they recruited 29 patients who are suffering from the chronic illnesses like the fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, or inflammatory bowel disease, or arthritis. What they did is they asked few questions before mindfulness practice and 6 months after mindfulness practice. And again, the research is again astonishing, and it garnered a very interesting and significant result. The participants not only informed that there is decrease in pain and decrease in discomfort level, but they also reported there is a decrease in diminution of pain and there is decrease in feeling of helplessness. So it proves that again, mindfulness keeps us healthy. And after this study, actually a lot of research done, and it helps in decreasing or preventing even our lifestyle diseases like hypertension, diabetic mellitus, atherosclerosis, and heart disease. So mindfulness is so important to keep us healthy. The study is mindfulness that can help us in our workplaces. It increase our focus and concentration. Can anybody recognize this person? He's a Buddhist monk actually. His name is Matthew Ricard, and he is known as the happiest person in world. If we Google, we'll get this person in Google actually. And what the neuroscientists at University of Wisconsin they did is they put 256 sensors in his scalp when he is doing a mindfulness meditation on compassion and kindness. And this is the first time in world actually they reported a massive burst of gamma waves. Gamma waves actually that was not recorded earlier in a awake patient and who is doing meditation actually. And this is the first time they reported. And the importance of gamma wave is it's related to attention, it's related to consciousness, it's related to learning and memory. So if we do mindfulness practice, actually it helps in increasing our focus and concentration, which can be used in our workplace, and the productivity will surge immediately. The most difficult thing now, ladies and gentlemen, is how to practice this. Whenever we are at home in the morning time, we do all the meditation and focus and concentration. But once we go to workplace, we totally forget everything and we are busy in our work. But at that time, how to practice concentration is the most important thing. So to practice that, even at workplace, we have to aware about our anchor point. Anchor means something like our awareness is moving one place to other, and our job is to bring that awareness from other place to one point, and we can keep awareness in that point, and from that point again we can start our journey. So the anchor points, what I choose is breath, which is happening 24/7 in our life. Our life start with the inhalation and finish with the exhalation. So it's happening 24/7. And whenever we are wandering, whenever our awareness is wandering, we can bring it back lovingly and gently to breath, and we can start our journey again. The other thing is heartbeat. But it's the problem with the heartbeat is we cannot listen to it with an open eye. We have to close our eye by either a earphone or any type of occluder. Then only we can listen to our heartbeat. And in the early morning, it is very much possible to listen to our heartbeat. The other point or anchor point, what I choose is our tip of the index finger. And this is exist all the time. So we can bring back our awareness to the tip of the finger again. We can look it at for some time, and definitely will get relaxed immediately. This is the principle of development of mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is developed by John Kabat in Harvard University. And the same thing, I am going to, I made a video for this, audio for this, and let's practice this for 8 minutes. But before starting this audio, let me tell the benefits of it, because this is all I made in a scientific base. The first thing is we can keep our awareness at one place. Second thing is we can move our awareness from one place to the other. Third thing is I'll tell you to tense your muscle. So whenever you are tensing your muscle or making like you are making a fist or something, what is happening is it helps in increasing the growth hormone. That is called isometric exercise. And when we are doing isometric exercise, there is increase in the growth hormone that is helping the bodybuilding or muscle building. The fourth thing I will tell is to take deep breaths. So whenever you are taking deep breaths, actually it will help, it will stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system that will decrease the heart rate and blood pressure. And finally, I will tell you to keep your awareness just above the center of your forehead. So it is seen again that if we do this type of mindfulness, that will increase the gray matter concentration in our brain, there where all the synapses and the linkage happen, and that will increase our memory speed. So let's start with this knowledge, this audio session. Just keep yourself totally calm and try to make no movement at all. Are you ready to start? Can we put a yes in the chat box so that anybody can put yes to the chat box so that I can start? Yeah. Fine. Great. So let's start mindfulness session for 8 minutes, and let's be totally calm and try to no movement at all. Welcome to Refresh Relaxation and Mindfulness Technique. Sit down comfortably on your chair. Hands perfectly rested on your thighs. Head feet perfectly stable on your ground. Close your eyes. Now, one thing remember, whenever your awareness goes, your energy flows. Now bring your awareness to the contact point between your feet and floor. Tense your feet. Tense. Relax. Imagine seeing your great toe in your closed eyes. Now move your awareness from your great toe to the tip of the index toe. Now imagine seeing tip of your middle toe and then
awareness to tip of your little toe.
Sound.
Are you feeling any sensation?
Okay. Okay.
Sensation of warm, cold, tingling sensation, or any vibration?
Sorry, is the voice is very low? Probably people are not able to listen. Yeah. Okay. Let me try it once again. Okay. Okay. I'll try it once again. Sorry.
Welcome to 3-phase relaxation and mindfulness technique.
Is it better now? Anybody can
Sit
put
down
in the.
comfortably on your chair. Hands perfectly rested on your.
Sorry, friends. Something wrong here. I.
Welcome to 3.
Yes. Sorry. Something is problem here. Is it better now? Anybody can put
Welcome
it.
to 3-phase relaxation and mindfulness technique. Sit down comfortably on your chair.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Hands perfectly rested on your thighs. Head, feet perfectly stable on your ground.
Great. Okay. Let's continue.
Close your eyes. Now, one thing remember, wherever your awareness goes, your energy flows. Now, bring your awareness to the contact point between your feet and floor. Tense your feet. Tense. Relax. Imagine seeing your great toe in your closed eyes. Now, move your awareness from your great toe to the tip of the index toe. Now, imagine seeing tip of your middle toe and then see in your closed eyes tip of the fourth toe. Now move your awareness to tip of your little toe.
Sorry, friends. Actually, his voice is not clear. I'm extremely sorry for that. I don't know why the problem. I recorded it, but can we do directly? Is it okay for all of you for a few minutes? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll guide you. Let's do for 5 minutes if it is possible. Yes, that's great. Thank you. Let's do it directly. Am I audible clearly? I think it's okay for everyone. Yeah. Yes, great. So, friends, let's start again. Sorry, extremely sorry for that. Let's try again and have a session for at least 5 minutes. Kindly close your eyes and bring your attention to the contact point between your feet and your floor. Then move your awareness from the contact point to the great toe. In your closed eyes, try to see the tip of the index finger, index toe. Then move it to the tip of the middle toe. Now to the fourth toe. And finally to the little toe. Now tense your feet. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Are you feeling any sensation? Like any warm, cold, any vibration, or any other sensation? Observe it. Now, in your closed eyes, move your awareness from your feet to the calf muscles. Tense your calf muscles. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Observe any vibration or any warm or cold sensation or any reaction you are noticing. Then move your awareness to the thighs. Tense your thighs. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Observe any sensation. Now move your awareness to the lower part of the abdomen. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Watch any sensation you are feeling again. Move your awareness again to the chest area. Imagine you are receiving all the love, kindness, compassion from the world. Tense your chest. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Move your awareness to the shoulder and arms. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Observe any sensation you are feeling. Any vibration, cold, hot, anything. Now move your attention, move your awareness to the neck area. Tense your neck. Tense, tense, tense. Relax. Now, take slow and deep breaths. Inhale fully. Hold it as much as time you can. And exhale fully. Do it for 3 times. Now, in closed eyes, bring your awareness to the forehead, just above the center of your forehead. And keep your awareness there for at least 1 minute. Try to maintain absolute no movement and try to keep your awareness there for 1 minute. Now open your eyes slowly, very slowly, and come back again to this presentation. How do you feel now? Do you feel any less rumination in your critical thinking? Are you feeling any calm and more relaxed now? Now, we have to do it repeatedly, friends, to reduce our anxiety and stress level so that we can be more happy and healthy and we can live a longer life. So this other one more thing what we can practice is our heartbeat. This is the breath technique. The other thing is we can practice is our heartbeat. Let me see. Yes. So heartbeat is again happening 24/7, but we cannot listen it with a open ear. We have to put a earphone or any anti-noise noise cancelling earphone, so we can listen to it clearly, our heartbeat. And best time is during the morning time when the outside noise is very low. So how we can use this is listen to your heartbeat. Think that all the energy, all the oxygen going to your brain, then coming to your neck area, then coming to your shoulder and other parts of the body, like that. Total body scan you can do and feel energized. Think like that you are getting energy from your from this body scan and from the movement, and moving the awareness from one part of the body to other part. Now the third interesting thing in what we can do in our workplace even is, whenever you are wandering or your awareness is wandering, we can bring your awareness to your tip of the index finger. How can you do this? Just observe your tip of the index finger. Can you do it right now? Try to see the tip of your index finger. We can see the fingerprints there. If you observe it properly, you'll feel some heaviness there. You'll feel some sensation like warm or cold. Now you can move your awareness to the distal crease here, slowly. Then again from distal crease to middle crease to the proximal crease. Observe any sensation. Definitely by this time we'll observe some heaviness or warm or cold sensation. Again, go back from the proximal crease to the middle crease, the distal crease, and the tip of the finger. This is the practice that is done in mindfulness-based stress release program. You can use any anchor point and bring your awareness there and keep it there for some time and move your awareness. So what the benefit of this is, our critical thinking will come down for some time, and the rumination in the thinking process, what it was going on, the stress level, the anxiety, we divert our mind from that area of our brain to the other area of our brain, and we'll start feeling like that emotions or feelings for some time. And again, we can start our journey. So basically breaking our conditionings and starting our journey again. My dear friends, without practice, nothing will happen. I don't believe in practice makes perfect, but definitely practice makes us progress. So I request all of you to start mindfulness practice as soon as you go from here. So finally, mindfulness can be applied not in these three areas of our life. It can be applied to our relationship, our parenting. Either it can, if you want to decrease your weight or increase your weight, or to increase any other field of our life, any other aspect of our life. Like the most important thing is relationship. You can listen to your loved one or spouse mindfully And what I do is I try to listen to her mindfully for at least 15 to 20 minutes. It's very difficult to do, but I'm trying it. Just to wrap up the session, all our problems, personal, interpersonal, professional, social, either directly or indirectly, start from mindlessness. Wherever our awareness goes, our energy flows. And mindfulness is the practice of being aware of our body, mind, and feeling, and also the surrounding environments. It is proven that mindfulness reduces the anxiety, stress level, and it decreases the incidence or even prevent chronic illnesses. And it also increases the focus and concentration. And we know about the 3 anchor points where we can keep our awareness when our awareness wandering in our day-to-day practice. And finally, we learn about 3 mindful sessions, 3 mindful practices. So, my dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, our health, happiness, relationship, success, everything is now within us. We can tell it is in our fingertip. And if we can do it regularly, definitely we can change our life. So I am leaving with you this thought that mindfulness, you can apply wherever you like it, and you are going to change your life. This is Dr. Sushant, wishing you a mindful life and a happy, healthy, and prosperous life till we meet next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sushant. It was a very, very practical and very and as well as a lot of professional problems for everybody. I think this
Thank
is
you,
a very
sir.
important point. I have a couple of clarifications from you. Now,
Yes,
we
sir.
said this mindfulness in the workplace. Now,
Yes.
how can we practice in the workplace? My impression is that we should practice this every day for a particular time, say 10 minutes, 15 minutes, like that, and hope the effect of that runs through the day. Is it possible,
Yes.
or we need to do it intermittently?
Yes, sir. Actually, I started doing meditation long back, but what I found is, I do meditation for 10, 15 minutes morning, but as soon as I go to work, I everything started forgetting. So I realized that I should do it like 3 ways. Like I'll start my priming with maybe 10 minutes daily for meditation in the morning time. And I have to maintain this throughout the day. Whenever I get time for 1, 2 minutes or maybe 5 minutes, I'll sit down and just try to bring the awareness and try to relax the mind. And evening time again before going to sleep. So I'm trying this. I don't know how it is helpful for everyone, but what I think is doing 10 to 15 minutes is not helpful for throughout the day. Because once we again go back to work and start that critical thinking and we are in the stress environment, we are totally forgetting about the mindfulness and everything.
So how do we
And we are
continue?
losing.
How do
Yes.
we make it continue?
So this is happening.
Hmm?
That's why if we can do an anchor point like a breath and try to bring back our awareness to the tip of the finger or any part of the body. This is the mindfulness based stress reduction strategy, what they are doing in Harvard University. So if you can bring awareness to any part of the body and rest there for some time, so the diminution of our stress and anxiety will come down immediately. Because we are moving our awareness from one part of the brain to other, which is literature is saying actually.
So is it something akin to self-hypnosis, this mindful meditation?
We can say like that, sir, but I don't have any idea about hypnosis. But definitely it's like a positive thinking, and we are changing our awareness from negative part to positive part. Like a positive hypnosis also we can say.
Because as a neurologist, we see in general a lot of cases of tension, headache, anxiety, and all. So
Yes.
for every patient, I tell them do meditation, mindful meditation, and all that. And some people come back and say they are doing it every day religiously, but their lifestyle has not changed. you think they are not doing it properly, or in them it is not effective for the rest of the day?
I think, sir, whenever you are doing this, for me, what I'm observing, definitely it will, the stress level or anxiety will come down for some time. But it is very difficult to sustain whole day actually. So what I think is, it's not like 10 minutes of morning practice, because what I think is, if we do 10 minutes of meditation or mindfulness practice morning, what we are doing the rest of the 23 hour and 50 minutes, we are we are going to that distraction mode, and whatever we practice, that grows. If we bring our practice to mindfulness, that will grow. If we bring our practice to distraction, that will grow. What we are doing is observing 24/7 our mobile phone, and we are going to a distraction state, and we are thinking that I am not able to concentrate. This is the thing what is happening, and people are observing. It is studies shown that people are observing 150 times per day, seeing their phone and checking their mobile. This is the average number, 150 times per day. Maybe one person 300 times, maybe one person 50 times, but average is 150 times. Even if we are seeing 150 times per day our mobile phone, what will be our concentration level? This is what I think. So
we can have some questions or some suggestions from the audience, please. Participants.
Sir, Dr. Ravi here. May I audible?
Yeah.
Yes, Ravikesh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Actually, according to me, sir, I am from psychology background. I would like to add few points.
Great.
Mindfulness is a state, and we can develop it. And this state is consists two things. One is our, awareness, and second is being non-judgmental. So we can, utilize it in our day-to-day life, anytime, anywhere. Because suppose if I am eating, I have to just focus on my eating, because nowadays we try to focus more about our thoughts. Thought could be negative, thought could be positive. And we know that when we are focusing on our thought and we are anxious, these thoughts could be catastrophic in nature, and that can affect our day-to-day life. And if I am utilizing this mindfulness state and just being aware, then somewhere it is going to reduce those negativity and negative emotions. So this is from my side, sir. Thank you.
That's great, actually. Dr. Ravik is extremely is correct. We can apply even during drinking water or even eating food also. So what during eating also, what we can do is we can test the food, we can chew it properly, we can feel the saliva, we can, like that we can do mindfulness during eating or anytime, anything. Like driving, we are totally focused on our roads, like that. Before going to sleep also, we can do some meditation practice and go and bring our awareness or stress level down, to normal level and stress level down. So it's not like 10-15 minutes or what I realize is like an ongoing journey we have to continue. And definitely it will help if we practice for a long time.
Yeah, in a way, it is our relation with the reality. The more real we are, and just we are not focusing on our worries, our negative thoughts, and those things. And these three exercises, or let's say there are thousands of exercises to be mindful. And these exercises just teaches us how to be real with our, environment, with our life, with our children, with our relationship, and so on.
Yeah, can I have one comment?
Carry on.
Thank you, Dr. Sushant and Dr. Ravikesh, for your comments. Actually, one of the very practical way where we can practice mindfulness in the workplace or even at home is we can start practicing, say, meditation or mindfulness, say, few sessions every single day, as Dr. Sushant told. But one of the practical way where we can apply this is knowing planning the day before we sleep. Actually, before we sleep, what exactly you want to do tomorrow. If you plan for 15 to 30 minutes before you sleep, then it will really improve your productivity. For instance, if I plan my day tomorrow, if I know, suppose I'm going to reach the hospital at 8 o'clock, then I'm going to take my IP rounds. Then after that, of course, there can be deviations, but still if you know, then your focused attention and concentrations are going to be much more. And what will happen is you will be able to declutter your day. For instance, if I know that tomorrow 5 meetings in Narayana Hrudayalaya hospitals I'm not going to attend, then also that improves my productivity. So in an indirect way and very practical way, this improves. So you know your calendar, what are the things you are going to do tomorrow and what are the things you are not going to do. That also is going to improve your productivity. Generally, what I am doing these days is, number one, I do a meditation in the morning, and subsequently I include another meditation at around 2 o'clock when I am taking the lunch. So that if my day is not going well, because we are human beings, but by practicing meditation, the frequency, intensity, and duration of my anxiety and frustration is certainly coming down. Now, if I'm not doing well, then at 2 o'clock when I do the meditation and ask some questions to myself, then there is a possibility that again I may revive myself and can create a positive mood. And in the Stoic philosophy, they have suggested that a bedtime meditation helps a lot. That means, what are the things that I can improve tomorrow? It is going to tremendously enhance your performance day after day. So when you create a behavior and you practice it daily over a period of time, say for 10,000 hours, then definitely you create new neural network. Studies have shown that in London taxi drivers, when these GPS systems were not there, their amygdala and their navigation, their hippocampus was significantly bulky because they practice it over and over again. So therefore, we have to be mindful to practice this over a period of time so that we can, so that this becomes our habit and this becomes automatic.
Okay, Gopal. Sushant, it's not a question of meditation. Don't ask me whether I meditate or not. That's not the question here. There's something called, you must have heard, Ikigai in Japan. People say that if you take one country, Japanese people are the most happiest. And they say that whatever you do in life, do it with the utmost sincerity. And you must have heard of Steve Jobs going there once, and then one lady was stitching or something, and she did not even lift up her head and look at this person who was a chief guest of some program there, and they have the longest longevity of life. So my just a comment and a question also: is it mandatory that you should meditate, or you just concentrate on what you do in life? That is one. Second one, you were pointing at a monk and the sensors were placed in karma. Was recorded and all. See, the monks actually, they live in an island. I always feel so. And they don't need any refuge. But as normal human beings, I think we all need a shoulder to rest. A monk, for me, abides contemplating. He knows the body as a body. He live earnestly. He is mindful. He put away all the hankering and fretting of the world. But on the other side, there are people around us. We are not individual. We are not existing as an individual. So, for example, if one of my colleagues or two of my colleagues is constantly nagging me and creating problems for me, and I say that I am doing mindfulness practice and I don't react to it at all. So, in what way I should tackle that situation? Because after all, I'm a human being. I'm an individual. I can say that, see, I'm not going to get disturbed. But that is only in the conscious mind. In the subconscious mind, I am disturbed. It is at least affecting my sleep for half an hour. So this is a very practical question to you.
Yes.
Leave aside Ikigai, and I know that most of the people who are sitting here, Vinada has put up a very good comment on meditation. I am actually full of what you call surprise at people doing it very earnestly, like you or Gopal or whoever. But I am a very, very lesser mortal who comes across problems in daily life. I tend to react to it. I tend to assimilate something from it. And I think that over the years I've grown mature because of the fact that I have reacted to it. So do you want to say that by mindfulness practice, you should be an individual who should not react to any adversity in life? Is that what you mean? And this colleagues of mine don't take it like I have colleagues causing pestering in my department, but it is a fact that we all face it. So whether I should be like the Ikigai Japanese group, or I should be like a monk, or I should be like one of you who have come out of it. So this is a very practical question which I face every day.
Yes.
So can you give me an answer for that?
Yes. Coming to your first question, ma'am, I am not a monk or friend, not a teacher also. I am sharing my practical experience. The first question is, can we use meditation for that, or without that, any mindfulness you can practice or not? That's what we are asking.
Yeah.
So meditation is not required, madam, to my knowledge, because that's why I didn't give the name of meditation. It's a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness means, what the difference between mindfulness and meditation is, what I realize is, mindfulness is like an ongoing process. We have to do it every hour, every day, every minute. It's a moment to moment practice. And meditation is like a priming of your mind in the daytime. Maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, or if you're a monk, maybe 1 hour. But that is not possible for us in a practical life. Maybe 10 minutes, if you are priming your mind, that's enough. Then again, after that, you have to bring your awareness there to your anchor point, what we discussed is. But what we can do is, we can maintain that state of mind, that is the mindfulness, throughout the day. And it's very difficult. I have tried it, it's really very difficult. But if we can do, definitely people are very calm and quiet, we have seen, even in high stress environment. Why I practice is because we know in cardiac anesthesia how it is difficult. Surgeons are shouting, and a patient crashed suddenly. I was very much tense earlier. And I thought I have to do something about this. Then I found out this mindfulness book. And definitely when we change our awareness from one place to other, definitely it's helping. So let's not go to any connotations of like meditation or any religious practice. It is the body awareness, basically. The body scan method, what the Harvard University is telling is that mindfulness-based stress reduction. Anyway, everyone can visit that website, mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. There's a free 8 weeks of online session is there, and they are giving it free of cost to everyone. You can go to online and check it. It's clearly written. It's a body awareness only. If you don't have any religious practice, also just bringing our body awareness to one mind or awareness to one place, to body, that will decrease our rumination immediately. Not immediately, maybe it is seen that 17 seconds to maybe 5 minutes it will take to change our awareness from one place to other. That is called the context switching, actually. So that's why multitasking is a myth nowadays, we are telling. Changing one state of awareness to other state, it takes at least 17 seconds to 5 minutes. So we cannot change immediately. This multitasking is a myth. But we can do it. If we keep our awareness and bring it repeated to one place. And what I found is breath is the most important thing. That is happening 24/7, and we can bring our awareness to the breath. And definitely, if we take 3 breaths, 4 breaths, definitely will change our some state of mind. And the second thing is what you told is meditation is required or not, what you are asking, madam? How you are applying in daily life?
Or whether you should concentrate on whatever you are doing and just don't, what the Gopal was saying, don't declutter things and just focus on what you're doing. And then comes multitasking. Multitasking, of course, is the norm of the society now. We cannot just keep on seeing one. For example, I can talk only about patients. If there is a perplexing case coming to me in the morning, I cannot sit with that patient alone because the others are going to suffer. What I was pointing out is this Japanese people, what they do is they just concentrate on their job and they keep on doing that. I don't think meditation is a common practice there, but they are very happy. They're very contented. And the last question is about the colleagues around you. Are they part of our mindfulness practice, or we should again declutter from them, and then we as a soul existence as a monk should live? That is what exactly what.
Yes, I have heard about the Ikigai book. Actually, I have not read it. The police are the person who was living for a long time.
Ikigai is a wonderful book. I think you should read it. It's not short instances. It's a real lifetime experiences of people who are octogenarians, who are above 90. And
what I found out.
Yeah. And in that it's even written that. you take for this common audience, I can just share it. One lady has written that she takes 2 pegs of alcohol every day, and that brings mindfulness to her, and she's 102. So it may look very weird to this audience, but so what brings happiness to one person may not be exactly, can be extrapolated to the other person. So Ikigai is a small book which you can probably read, because it's all living people who have shared their experiences. So whether we should practice all this, or if you are happy on your own, certain people are very happy and carefree and nothing affects them. There is such a group of people also. Srinivas sir will agree to me.
What I found out about the difficult colleagues, madam, in workplace. Actually, I was also, everybody I think faced this situation once upon a time. And I was also really stressed out about the difficult colleagues and how to handle them. Then actually, we are conditions, madam, to behave like, if somebody say me like this, definitely I'll start reacting like that. And that is the conditioning or pattern what we have developed in our childhood. Actually, one book is there, that is the epigenetics. Mostly you have seen all our neurologists. That is the Dr. Bruce Lipton, the study of epigenetics. He has told that our genes are also conditioned by our environments. Actually, that's the 1/3 of our genes, and we have developed a pattern from our environment, from the childhood, how people are started behaving like us, from our parents or friends or teacher. We adopted that unknowingly, and that condition has developed. But we can break that conditioning. Somebody is talking to me and criticizing me. In spite of reacting that, I can be peace in myself, and without telling anything, I can be just accept it. This is what mindfulness is telling. So if we practice that repeatedly, it's like a muscle, and it will help in a long run. Not immediately, definitely is not helping. Still now I'm struggling, definitely. But it's telling that if we can practice it, definitely the stress level will come down. This is what we are.
I think mindfulness is basically focusing so that you keep the unnecessary thoughts away. I am told that we can do mindfulness practice even while walking, which I have started. See, I do a 45 minutes walk in the morning, and they said that mindful practice is to keep focusing on your feet rather than thinking of yesterday, tomorrow, that friend did this friend did this. So if you keep focusing on your feet as you are walking, that itself is a mindfulness, gives a relaxation. I don't know whether am I right, because I have read somewhere and I'm practicing.
Yeah, that's the thing what MBSR is telling us. We have to keep our awareness to one part of our body. That's all, and just move it from one part to the other part.
It
Very true.
automatically happens. Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree with that. Yeah.
And
Yeah, tell me.
yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
No,
Please go
nothing.
Uh,
The gene, I think, I don't know whether you're talking about that particular book. There's a book by Siddhartha Mukherjee, The Gene and Intimate History, I think. Yeah, that's the same things are being discussed. It is a highly controversial thing. How a man gets happiness is very different from Sushant to Sir Srinivas sir to me. So happiness comes in several different pathways. I think for me, I don't want to boil it down to one particular thing. Having great respect for you and Gopal. This is your way of practicing mindfulness, but Sir's way he told, and my way, I don't want to disclose whatever it is. But people keep asking for me, at least in the professional front, why are you, madam, so happy all the time? So I have to be happy there. So otherwise, how is that going to get into the other person? But um, there is a lot of controversies which are revolving around this particular thing. So I think mindfulness is not exactly what his meditation is. That people confuse both mindfulness and meditation. So that's all. Any other person can comment on it. I think I said a lot. And there are certain secrets which people don't want to reveal also. How are you happy all the time? Of course, Gopal knows that I'm not happy all the time, but sir, at least to my patients, because it's my duty, and to my the closest colleagues, I should be happy. But there are people whom I share my the very what do you call it, my very intimate problems as well. So mindfulness is a very broad term, I think. Sushant derives mindfulness by practicing this. Gopal derives mindfulness by several other things. Ravikesh maybe by a different thing. but it is good if you can practice it. But in a highly stressed individual like Srinivasa, I mean, a person who is having, for example, a juvenile myoclonic epilepsy, getting seizures not controlled by a drug, he is highly stressed, and you sitting at the other end of the table and saying that, okay, I'm going to teach you a stress releasing exercise. It's not going to work out, Sushant. Instead
Yes.
of doing that, I just go and just hug the person. I mean, not hugging whosoever I can hug, and say that you're going to be all right. I'm there with you. That is mindfulness for me. So that is what I thought. So, but
Yes.
this is a great learning example. I'm not trying to belittle you or giving not giving the due credit that is due for you. It's great. But people are in different levels. I think I'm in the lowest level. At least I'm still in that level.
Okay,
Yeah,
no problem.
yeah. I think Vinada has written along. Vinada is one of my friends, and she is into meditation. So, Vinada, can you just open up, because she is a person who does meditation very religiously, and she attends all our programs. She is a homemaker, but a very light person. And yes, Vinada.
Good evening, doctors. My name is Vinita, and I do practice techniques of art of living since 2004. So it has helped me a lot. I do practice breathing techniques. You might be all aware of this techniques and have heard of it. It is founded by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. And during my crossroads of life, it has helped me a lot. Dr. Ashalata knows me personally, and the events happened in my life. And I came across everything by practicing all these things and the practical knowledge, tools and techniques which he taught me. Because for everything to learn, we need a master, as Dr. Sushant said. Some book he has read, but somebody written that book, no? So there is a guru, master there. So when I was helpless, that knowledge came to my help. Then I was just hanging on to that knowledge points. One point it was there in my life, I could not do any breathing techniques or anything, but these practical tools and techniques which he taught me in the course called Happiness Program, it helped me a lot. So I do remember those points. Okay, everything is impermanent, nothing is permanent. No, it happens to everybody, not only to me. And accept people and situations as they are. And there is good and bad in each people's life. No, it is complementary. Good and bad is complementary. And so many other knowledge points are there. And how we can do this, it is attending to our own breath. As doctor said, it is the easiest thing which we can handle through our breath only, because mind is like a kite, and the breath is like the thread which we can handle it, no, the direction. So I do practice this breathing techniques, pranayams and meditation daily. I spend minimum 20 minutes and include yoga also. So I am really feeling good, and she knows how. Like my second daughter also was having a neurological issue, and like that only I met Dr. Ashalada, and I like her very much because she is very down to earth person, and what she said is always correct. Being there for people, that was her formula always, and she was so approachable. And every message, I was in Dubai, I was away, and we were miles away, but every time when I send a message, she knows my mind, because something happened in my life earlier, and how a mother feels, no, when her daughter is having a what is that irretractable epilepsy, so FCD. What all, I don't know to explain about that, but know how a mother will feel. So she could understand all my feelings, and that was her mindfulness. She was there 100%. Every moment she was there 100% with me. So my family members used to wonder how you can be approachable to such a busy doctor there. And she is a associate professor, she is very busy, I know, but she could understand my feelings, and she was there throughout. And my daughter had undergone a craniotomy, uh, and I could get a good doctor, surgeon for doing that. Everything is suggested by me, and the grace, I believe that grace, that there is no grace, then it won't happen to my life. So that is also there. I'm so much grateful to Dr. Ashalada and for being invited for this meeting, seminars like this. I don't know. having beyond words. I cannot express the feelings. Thank you so much, doctors. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinitha.
Thank you.
I think
Can I have one comment?
Sure.
Yeah. See, I absolutely agree, madam. See, there we don't need meditation, actually. So, if I have reviewed recently the one psychology literature by Dr. Shihai Csikszentmihalyi. That so what happens is that when you love something, like suppose for example, you love to see patients and you are always available for your patients. And what happens that many times when I was a resident in Sri Chitra, I have seen that you have not taken even your lunch many days till 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, but you forget yourself. That is the state where almost you're like mindful practice or in a meditative state, because you love to do this service to the mankind in such a way that it is, I mean, that is more than enough. And really it is normally around 5 to 10% of the time we are in a state that is where we forget ourselves. That is called the state of flow. And if we can increase that by either doing meditation or whatever we love, like for example, whenever as a neurologist, whenever I am seeing a complicated cases, I forget myself and I don't know the diagnosis. I am very busy in that state. And the moment I get some kind of diagnostic clue or something, then I feel that, oh, now I am hungry, I have to go. And that itself is a meditative state. So meditation or mindfulness practice, I mean, we can start that, but when you love something, and I don't think that meditation may be required because it's a totally ongoing continuous process. But when we start this and we know the breath technique and mindfulness practice, it will help us to be mindful 24/7. And that is probably the long-term goal.
Gopal, happiness is defined as doing what you love most.
Yes,
so
sir.
Whatever you love most, if you practice that, that itself is a happiness.
Yes, sir.
What you are telling is exactly that.
Yeah, we have two more people, sir, and with that we'll wind up. One is Dr. Praveen. Praveen is a very famous neurologist who's into headache now. And I know him since he was, I think, from first standard onwards. And one other person is Dr. Shyam Nadeshan. He's a cardiologist. I think both of them have put some good comments. Praveen, can you just open up? He is also into mindfulness and similar techniques and all. So he has provided a link for all of us. I think it's there here. But Praveen, could you please come up and say a few words? Because this is an exchange program where we learn from each other, no? None of us are complete actually. So Praveen has to come up. He's a very budding neurologist, but a very prominent figure. He's into headache actually. And I know Praveen personally because we are from the same hometown. And I've seen him putting trousers and walking around me. And then from there he has grown to a very young, very, very, very famous neurologist now. Yes, Praveen. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ash Chechi. I call her Chechi, elder sister. Then like we grew up like a family together in the same hometown. And Dr. Srinivas, sir, thank you so much. And you have been my teacher when I used to come to Sagar Apollo for listening to your classes while I was posted in New Hands. And thank you so much. At this point, what I just wanted to say is everyone's right. I mean, there is no single right. There's been a lot of hype about mindfulness. My video is basically called Mindfulness Demystified. Exactly what Dr. Dash and in fact, Professor Ashalata, Professor Srinivas, everyone has told the same thing. If you've seen this movie called The Karate Kid, in which there's this master teaching the student on wiping a wall. And the boy thinks, what's the whole purpose of wiping a wall? He just makes him do it for like continuously for a long time until he becomes so engrossed in it, and finally it becomes a part of his reflex. So mindfulness and meditation, it's more like an oxymoron. There is no need for meditation when there is mindfulness. So you can be mindful, as Srinivasa said, when you're walking, and it depends on what activity you are in and how much sensory inputs you can take in. Ultimately, the whole thing about the Zen Buddhism and about mindfulness was about being in the present rather than being in the past or the future, which means that many people find that being in the present is difficult when thoughts just come in. But a lot of people tend to have that ability when they can focus on their breath or just focus on being there. So when I attended my first mindfulness course around 15 years back, For about 4 days, it was a very immersive experience by sitting, just being there. And apparently by the 4th or 5th day, it was an easy practice. So initially it was so difficult, but at the same time, with practice, it becomes easy. And when I say that you can be mindful even when you're driving, it sounds scary, but basically, if you're driving and you're being in the present, that is when you're actually holding the steering, and basically and listening to everything around, the sounds of the horn, the vision. So multimodal sensory kind of experience. It need not be a single mode. So there's no need for this type of meditation where you have to focus on one single visual input only. For example, Tratak meditation. So there are different means. This could be a sort of multi-sensory. You're just experiencing everything at the same time. For mindful eating, in the video which I have showed, actually, there is this yogi, there's this lady who has practiced yoga for many years. And it's a demonstration of how when you're doing a mindful eating, you're appreciating everything from the spoon in your hand, the food that's going in, and being in that present at the same time. Of course, when you're suppose you are doing a busy, let's say someone says that, okay, what happens if you're in the emergency room or if you're on call? You can still be in that particular mode, whatever you're doing. So you're eating, you're being mindful. You suddenly got an on call saying that there's an emergency in the ER. Yes, you attend the on call and then move on the way. On the way, when you're walking, you're being mindful. When you're attending a patient, you're being mindful. So basically, mindfulness is just a way of life, and there is no need for a particular a time or a place to be in that particular mode. So I guess that's important. And second thing is about the whole thing about the default mode network and kind of expanding the level of interconnectivity as experienced by people who are into meditation, especially using entheogens, spiritual cults and cultures of times in South America, and people, shamans, and when they take certain compounds, and in fact, that's all the research which is going on now on using these for conditions like depression and anxiety. When these entheogens are used, like psilocybin, and they tend to kind of make this dualistic mind of ours into a sort of a singularity, where now you feel so interconnected with everything that you're always happy, because you no longer feel that you're different from everything around. And that experience is apparently continues after the usage of those compounds, even if for a minimal period of time. Of course, that is a pharmacologically induced, even though it's from nature. You can say that it's sort of but then if the practice of this mindfulness over a long period of time also has shown that you suddenly become sort of a period of less into your past and your future, and being in the present itself has opened up channels, and you become so connected with the whole of nature. I guess that's my small bit of it. I'm not an expert on mindfulness, but I thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on it. Thank you.
It's a great, sir. I just want to add one more movie into this. I started Karate Kid, and one more movie is there, Peaceful Warrior. It's a true story actually.
It's a true story. The Peaceful Warrior series, actually, it's actually an amazing book. The peaceful way of the warrior. I mean, warrior. It's something very difficult to understand, that warrior is something which is against from peace, isn't you're always fighting and making war. But apparently, they say that the whole philosophy is that you fight and you become angry only because you feel insecure and you feel yourself weak. That's why you become defensive. Whereas if you know your strengths, you actually avoid a fight, because you know that you're so powerful that if you try to do anything, the other person will finally lose. So you avoid such encounters and sort of thing. It's called Mysterious Ways of the Peaceful Warrior series. Amazing book.
Yes. It's about I think Dan Millman is there.
Dan Millman.
Yeah, I think he was a gymnast or something. That's such a wonderful movie. And I think the Karate Kid is something which all of you should see, as Praveen was rightly saying. So we'll wind up with Dr. Shar Nadeshan. He's a cardiologist from Quailon. And sir is a wonderful person in the sense that he reads a lot. And I should confess that I also have never met him. We have connection only through this contraption called WhatsApp, which you were saying that the screen time will be 5 hours or 6 hours. But unfortunately, Sushant, in this era of pandemic, all the messages like what Virada was saying, I get a sense of what you call a pricking conscience if I don't reply to that immediately. So that is maybe that's my problem. But then I don't use it for getting relaxation for myself in some other way, but probably so. All the time, I don't think people are misusing it. That is also a false notion. I can see if you go to the airport, people are going and surfing it all over again. And another person may be reading a book. Another person may be just looking all around. Who among this is right is a relative term. I mean, it's
Yes.
a relative to this thing. So we should not be judgmental about the screen time also, because of my screen time, I was just checking. It was yesterday, it was 5 hours because I was not there in town, and at least for some 26 people I've replied. But that is mindfulness for me. Having said that, I invite Dr. Shyam Nareshan sir to come up and say a few words. And I also would love to see your face if you don't mind, sir.
Madam, it was a really wonderful session. Dr. Sushant has explained in detail about mindfulness. See,
Thank you.
that is extremely useful. It is a very innovative thing which we all should do. But personally, what Dr. Asarada Madam said is absolutely true. When a patient is in distress, when we console them and hug them, that comfort, that feeling, that special feeling what we get, as you asked during mindfulness, what happened, what feeling you get, that is the most satisfying feeling that we get. So it was an excellent session. I don't think I have never ever attended such a beautiful session.
Well,
Thank you,
thank you,
madam.
sir. Just I want to add one thing, sir. In US, one doctor is there. I'm forgetting his name. Actually, he did this not mindfulness. He did this hypnosis in a Parkinson patient, and he was an intern actually. I'm forgetting his name. And this hypnosis is just like a positive thinking. He do into hypnosis, and he was internship actually at that time. And this worked like a wonder in Parkinsonism. And he has after that he developed all these techniques, and now he has a YouTube channel also, and he's a speaker. He has written a book also. I'm forgetting his name. So this works actually in Parkinsonism, like that movement disorders and all. But definitely when somebody is suffering from epilepsy and if we ask him to calm down, it's really difficult.
One
Yeah,
last
no
comment
more,
from, sir, one last comment is there from Dr. Swarna from Vivekananda Institute. So Dr. Swarna, can you just share your experience?
Thank you so much, Dr. Das. And hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Spurana. I'm an Ayurveda doctor, and I did my master degree in yoga and rehabilitation. Now, I just wanted to share my experiences with mindfulness practice. And I did my master degree 3 years yoga only because I wanted to help myself for epilepsy condition. My experience is that practicing meditation in morning hours, like where I put all my attention to one point, either body awareness or breathing, or even doing the yogasana where I consciously put my attention whole at one point, some joints or some muscles. Yeah, this also helped me keeping myself mindful throughout the day, mostly bringing my attention to what I am actually doing, therefore cutting down most of the unwanted thoughts which run in the background. you know and over a period it actually developed my ability to be mindful so much that I started noticing when I'm going to experience stress. So it was already known to me, at least my pattern was, when I am emotionally very stressed, I would get a seizure attack. So then over a period of time when I started practicing meditation, I was able to know okay, I am already getting stressed. Then I would make necessary changes. I would step back, or I would talk to the person with whom I'm dealing. I'm really feeling stressed, can I take a break, or whatever. earlier if somebody shouted or like something, I just used to struggle and somehow, and only to end up in a seizure attack. Now I know what is the better thing to choose. Instead of allowing myself to have an attack, I would request. But this became possible only because of mindfulness practice. Over a period of time, I see so much of benefit psychologically also. When I practice mindfulness meditation, being non-judgmental has helped me to observe when my subconscious thoughts are coming, like Dr. Explained earlier, 80 to 85% of thoughts are repeated, conditioned, all like repeated, same things are coming even from my childhood or from yesterday, from last month. No, this is not okay, that should have been different, or whatever things were coming. When I started practicing not being non-judgmental, it helped me to understand myself, my pattern of judgment. Okay, this is how I judge situations. And then when I started observing my own pattern of judgment also, my pattern of thinking also, and not to be judgmental about myself, it has made it so easy to forgive people. My resentment over my father, he was so abusive, alcoholic, and my things childhood, and my unhappiness about my own childhood. There are people, like so many children who have had worse life than myself, but they are not sticking on to it because their way of judgment or like interpreting things are different. When I understand how my brain is wired, it has become much easier to understand. I'm not saying I am like upside down, I'm completely different, I still have seizure, like I'm not seizure free. But the thing is, those 3 years when I stayed in the campus with doing meditation every single morning, I was seizure free 3 complete straight years.
That's a great.
And like Dr. Das explained, plan your day. That was also the time, because I was in the campus, days are planned. I know, because timetable is there. What happens morning, what should I do? Afternoon, what should I do? Evening, what should I do? It's all well planned and executed, and I'm more mindful. Okay, my mind already knows what I should do, and I can focus on it easily. Probably I really believe planning in advance. But now that I'm not in campus, I'm in a family, there are other things. It would be much helpful for me if I plan my days in advance, so that my brain will don't have to go through a lot of load at a time. And also I can be more mindful that okay, this is what I should be doing, and this would automatically cut off unwanted thoughts for me. And yeah, apparently I'm not practicing every single day, even planning thing. Oh, but I am happy that meditation, mindfulness meditation practice has helped me to change my outlook over people. And most beautiful thing is, I have started appreciating things. With that old pattern, resentments were so much that uh, with those like 85% repeated thoughts, I would miss out appreciating so many blessings. But these days I see, like I can count so many blessings. My doctor, my husband, my spouse, like they're so sweet to me. And I also have developed a taste for appreciating. If I really go and thank somebody, I feel so joyful. It makes me feel so good to acknowledge that I am blessed. This I don't think without having practiced meditation for 3 straight years in campus, I'd have achieved this. And it's not easy now that I am not there in that premises, like madam was saying. They're saints, their lifestyle is different. Of course, I was not completely a saint. I was studying, pursuing my education, and there were other things I used to do. I used to play video games over phone and all of that. But still I had better mental condition, and I could yeah, could be free. I was free from seizure for 3 straight years. That was really something for me. And yeah, chanting Om, particularly when I experienced okay, my head is feeling weird, I could actually see, okay, it is feeling some heaviness here, I'm not able to feel. Then I would just cut off everything, even if I am in bus or even in car. I would close my eyes and, focus on my brain, actually on my head where I was feeling weird. And just to cut off all, like make it more intense, to be mindful, I would chant Om loudly so that I can hear only that sound. All other traffic sound and other things could be, cut off. It used to help me to, bring all my focus to, current situation, all like unwanted thoughts which were running in background stress would come down so dramatically. This is just my experience, maybe for some people it is easier, for some people it may not be that easy. For me, to be happy and, to have a control over my mind, meditation has really helped. And the best thing is, practicing very often. Whenever you feel stressful, take a break and be mindful, focus on your breath whenever, like even at office or whenever. And if possible, every 1 hour, like at least 1 minute mindfulness, just 1 minute every 1 hour. Close your eyes and, focus on your breath, and coming to that point, bringing all your awareness to where you are, develops a skill to, be mindful with what we are doing. Like we know, right? We go to exhibition and we see so many things, like we will be just moving. And when you come out so many times, you don't remember what you saw in exhibition. You have paid money, spent time to go and watch the thing there. If you're not really present, mindful there, like what is the purpose? Like so often, I was living my life like that. I am sorry if I took too much of time. Just wanted to convey that mindfulness based meditation is not only for the 10 or 15 minutes that you do, it has a potential to change your outlook for your life for good.
I thank you, Dr. Suparna, for a very, very important practical points which you have stressed. And I think this was a very good session which we had. And I thank the organizers, Dr. Gopal Das and Dr. Ashalata, and the speaker Sushant for the excellent talk. I think this is what we need today in our world, where we are chasing and chasing and chasing. We don't know what we are chasing. So we all continue to be unhappy in spite of so many things there. So as she said just now, I think the first thing we should do when we wake up in the morning is thank the Almighty for all the good things we already have, rather than look at others, they have it and I don't have. So don't have a list of I don't have the list of what we already have and be happy with that. And I think with this, I will hand over the mic to Ashalata or Gopal, one of the two, I don't know.
Sir, Gopal, we can announce the next session because a few of them have asked when is our next session. So it's going to be every month, first Sunday, 7 to 8 p.m. That is what. And we have an academic session that is the last Saturday. We don't invite many people for the academic session, sir, because already the rotten brain is so completely filled up with all neurology. So that is entirely neurology, but I mean epilepsy. All are welcome for that also. But this session will be there every month, and it is the first Sunday of every month, 7 p.m. And we have not put any time constraints for that because ultimately it's like an exchange program. What one person may be speaking may not be the same view as the other one. So Sushant has done a very wonderful job, and I've heard a lot about you from Gopal because Gopal is very close to my heart, and then we have traveled abroad, and I always keep hearing about you as his mentor. And when you think of a mentor, you think of a person who is like Vinada was saying, Sri Ravi Shankar and all. But having seen you, I am also quite surprised. And I don't think we have met while in Chitra. That is again another fallacy of Chitra. We are all in our compartments, and when we come out of our compartments, it becomes a hassle. So we don't attempt to do that. But it's very wonderful, actually. Yeah. So Gopal, with that, can you wind up?
Yeah, I thank all of you for joining this session. So on the first Sunday of March, we'll have our next topic, and actually we have not finalized the topic. I will let you know very soon. So with this, we can declare the session closed. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank you.
you, everyone.
Thank you.